Psalm 66, verses 1, 2, and 3. Make a joyful shout to God, all the earth. Sing out the honor of his name. Make his praise glorious. Say to God, how awesome are your works. The word awesome has been so utterly abused by American pop culture that it has come to mean almost nothing. It's something that people say simply to add a little spice to their sentence without really meaning anything at all. But the psalmist, when he says how awesome are the works of God, he is using the word in the fullness of its meaning. He doesn't mean to say, yeah, God's works are pretty neat. It's pretty cool, man. He is telling us that God's works that surround us are so filled with his glory and his wisdom that the psalmist, at least, is filled with wonder and amazement at the works of God. You know, those who have been to the Louvre in Paris or the Sistine Chapel or other places like that sometimes talk about how standing there they are filled with a sense of majesty and wonder and awe. If gazing up at Michelangelo's ceiling fills people with a feeling of awe and wonder, how much more shouldn't we be filled with the majesty of God when we stare up at his creation in the night sky? You know, as a pastor, of course, it's my delight, my joy to dive deep into the wonderful works of God in his plan of salvation. And of course, of all God's works, that is the most glorious, the most wonderful, how he planned our salvation from the beginning of the world and brought it about step by step and finally sent his son to be born of the Virgin Mary, to die, to rise again, to ascend into heaven. And it's the glory of my profession to dive deeply into that one particular work of God. But each and every one of us has an occupation, a profession, an area of interest, which gives us the same opportunity to delve into the works of God. This earth is filled with the wonderful works of God. You know, unfortunately, so many people these days like to portray Christians and Christianity as though we are opposed to science, as though it's Christianity and faith versus science. And nothing could be further from the truth. Christianity, the Bible, God does not speak against science. Science, after all, is the study of God's wonderful works in nature. And modern science came about from the minds and is built upon the works of those who were, like our psalmist, so filled with the wonder and the glory of God's works that they just had to study and learn every little thing about it. No matter almost any profession, occupation that you choose in your life gives you an opportunity to study these wonderful works of God. Farmers have the opportunity to study God's power and majesty, God's wonderful works in soil and weather and crop growth. I don't know that much about it. You know, I plant seeds and try to weed and water my garden and hope the plants grow. But I know that there is so much there to learn and to study, to understand how God created and brings these plants out from tiny seeds to produce food for us to eat. Artists have the opportunity to study God's wonderful works in light and pigments and color. Musicians, whether you like music primarily simply to perform and listen to it, or whether you want to study the physics behind it, either way, you have the chance to grow every day with a greater appreciation for this amazing gift that God has given to us in music. Veterinarians in God's animals. most of us think, oh man, that sounds kind of boring. But those who are really love it and really into it, that's nothing more than this same awe, this same wonder, even if they don't know God, and they don't understand that it's God's creation. Nonetheless, it's still that same wonder at what God has created in numbers and math that leads them to delight so much in studying that and to grow in that awe of God's works. God's works surround us. They fill us. And even those things that seem simple at first, like light. When you're a child, you think, well, light, you flip the switch, the light comes on. What's the big deal? If it goes through a prism or a droplet of water, you get a couple different colors. But there's such a depth to study there. And when you really dive into it, it shows the majesty and the wisdom and power of our God. Truly, as our psalmist says, how awesome are your works, O Lord. They fill and surround us every day of our life, especially his work of salvation and the forgiveness of sins through his Son, Jesus Christ. Let's finish with the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever.